Well, Rachel, thank you for taking a minute to come on. I'm certainly looking forward to digging in to your world. You've had an extraordinary life, made an extraordinary impact at still such a young age. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited. So, your new book, What If You Are the Answer? And, I think when I think about you and all that you've done and all the things that you've been through at some level and who you are and how you show up in the world, I'm curious, why this book, right? And sort of why now?
Yeah, so this was not intentional, but I actually think this book is a really beautiful closing of a chapter for me in the personal development space. When I wrote Girl Wash Your Face, which for people who are not familiar was the first big breakout book that I had. It was my sixth book. I feel like that's very important to say, 'cause I think that a lot of stuff on social media makes us believe that there are overnight successes, and I don't know anybody who has that story.
Sure.
So my sixth book, the first time I wrote nonfiction, the first time I wrote about working on your life and trying to make things better, was this big breakout for me. And since then, that is what I have been known for. And when I got the opportunities that came along with the success of that first book, it really propelled me to believe that, like, wow, I really know what I'm doing. I really know, I got some ideas and I can share some things, and I'm such a creature of wanting to figure out how to do anything in my life better. So I test a lot of stuff, and then I just bring it to my audience and go, hey guys, this is what helped me with my anxiety, or this is what helped me get my business to the next revenue goal. These are the exact steps that I took. And I always hope that if you heard my story, even if you didn't follow my exact path, that just maybe hearing how I figured it out would be helpful. So I went into that situation kind of overwhelmed by the success it was having, and really felt like I needed to step into that moment. Like, okay, well, I can have your answers. I can come up with enough great answers to give everyone the ideas. And it has been, 8 years since I wrote that book.
Sure.
And I've gotten older, and as I say in the opening chapter of this, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face, which is my favorite Mike Tyson quote. And I have just been honestly punched in the face a lot, and I think a lot of us have. Anybody who walked through 2020, I don't know how you got through that unscathed.
Yeah.
And so I find myself in this place at almost 42 years old, just realizing it is impossible for me to have answers for other people. I barely have answers for myself. But I do have some really good questions. I have a framework that has really helped me to sort of be my own therapist at times, my own coach at times, to unpack what was going on, to get real with myself about where I need to improve. And I thought, well, if I shared the questions with you, it doesn't give you the answers, but hopefully it gives you a framework to go on your own journey to become the best version of yourself.
That's so beautiful. That is so awesome. And to me, questions curiosity, and I want to dig into that because it's such a powerful way to learn about others, and certainly to learn about ourselves. And you push us to do that with these 26 questions. And I feel honored truly to have gotten an early copy and been able to peel in and ask some of these questions to myself. And they're challenging, they're tough, they're real, Rachel. And that is just what it's all about. And, you wrote through a lot of grief, this book, and you talk about that in the introduction, and you talk about going through 4 of the most challenging years truly of your life. Can you talk a little bit about
something?
Yeah, yes, it is. And so how did you write through grief? I mean, I sort of think about, I've written 6 books too, Rachel, and like you, right? It is birthing a child. It is a lot. And then to think about layering on all of the things that you had in your life while doing it, it appears that it has fed into helping the book be even better, which is even more amazing. But I'm curious how you did it.
Well, so a couple of thoughts occur to me as you're saying that. One is writing is my therapy. And whether I ever got the incredible gift of being a published author or not, I would have been writing. And I've done it since I was a little girl in all sorts of different formats, but journaling is a huge part of my life and has been forever. And I actually had the instinct to say, because I know you have a lot of high performers who listen to your show, Molly, and one of the things I think is really helpful for me, and I don't know how this is going to sound, so everyone just take it with a grain of salt. The higher that I have gotten in terms of success, the harder it has been to find people who could identify with all the types of stresses I was going through. Now, I'm positive there are incredible, like, high performance coaches who would be the exact right person for me to talk to at the exact right time, but I don't know how to access them. And so I found over time, I would go try and see a therapist, or I would talk to my girlfriends, and they could relate to some parts of my life, but not others. But I really needed to talk through what I was feeling or processing, and journaling became like the greatest tool I have. Just sitting down, whether it's, like Julia Cameron says, doing your morning pages and just writing every single day, just sort of see what comes up, or whether it's really intentional, like asking yourself a question, giving yourself a prompt, go on ChatGPT and say, what's a great prompt for me to explore today to consider how I'm going to plan out, my business for 2025. Like, see what you can find to prompt yourself to write through what you're feeling. Because stress is, we all know, one of the number one killers of people in one form or another. It sits in our spirit. It sits on our shoulders. It physically affects us, mentally, emotionally, all of the things. And writing through what I'm going through has been just this great release. It's also, I just got chills, honestly. I keep all of my journals. I'm pointing over here, you can't see, but there's a cabinet of journals for years.
Wow.
And sometimes when I'm having a hard day, or when I feel like, I should be further along, I should have done this, I'm shoulding all over myself.
Right.
I will go grab a random journal and just open.
Wow.
Just, let's go back 5 years, let's go back 10, and let's see how far we've come. And give myself some credit for, what? Yes, you're not exactly where you want to be in these areas, but dang it, look how far you've come. So it wasn't actually a challenge to write through the hard stuff. It was a savior for me to write through the hard stuff.
Wow. And so essentially, I mean, you're writing, you're pouring in. Is this something you do in your journal almost every day, Rachel? I mean,
yes.
Throughout. And so
Absolutely.
At what point did you sort of, you're writing through the challenges, through the grief, you're capturing what's going on in your head and heart, you're asking questions. At what point did you sort of realize, wait a minute, if I was able to reframe these questions in a way, because curiosity, we both agree. I mean, I think curiosity is transformative. I think it is the key to transformation in our lives. I really do. I think it's the key internally and externally. When did you sort of make that pivot that, this is really about a core batch of questions that can shape my life, has helped me shape my life, can help others shape their life? When did sort of that become clear to you? And how did you pick the questions? I mean, you use 26 questions. They're so cool.
That was hard. Yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking, what didn't make the cut? Totally.
Yeah, that was hard. To be honest, I had an advantage in figuring out the through line of questions because I had this happen with Girl Wash Your Face. Meaning, with Girl Wash Your Face, I started writing what were essentially essays. I was just writing, hey, I want to do an essay on motherhood, and I want to do an essay on being an entrepreneur, and I want to do an essay on ambition in women. Like I want to talk about these things. And I thought, I'm just going to give myself permission to write these essays, not really knowing how they're connected. And then as I started to reread those essays, I realized that the challenge I was facing in every single one of those chapters was a lie. It was some kind of lie, some limiting belief that I had held on to that kept me stuck, that kept me small, that kept me scared. And I was like, whoa, all of these essays have this thing in common, which are these lies. And when it came to this new book, same kind of idea, because I wrote this the longest I've ever taken to write a book. I wrote it over 4 years.
Right.
And no particular order, really didn't even know if it would be anything, just felt like I wanted to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to revisit, I was like, I kept seeing the questions I was asking as I was processing this thing.
Wow.
And I was really hesitant, honestly, to write another book in this category, because I don't want to, it's not about me, it's about you, it's about the reader, it's about your experience. And so I was like, well, I really don't want to do this unless I can figure out how to really make it about her.
I love it.
And then I realized the questions, and I thought, oh, what if I could give her, so that was the how.
That is so cool to hear you say, because it is interesting, isn't it, as someone who is influencing so many people's lives, the expectation to show up consistently. And I could not agree with you more, Rachel. What's hard is, to me, I couldn't agree. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about how you can serve others.
Right.
And using these various mediums by which you have a raving group of people that follow you, that listen to you, and doing that in service of others. What a cool lens to approach all of it with. So awesome. Awesome.
You're saying that it is so much a part of, I think, anyone who's in roles like ours, where you're creating this stuff and you're putting it out and you're trying to share ideas that are helpful. I have to ask, because I'm so curious, and I know because your audience is here for you, right? They want to know about you. You had this job, this very high profile job that was about helping other people. And I'm curious, it's almost like the reverse. Like, was it scary for you to step into a role where now you're the one sharing the information? You're the one with your face in front of the camera. Like, you're the one. Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, no, well, you're so, I mean, I should have expected that a woman who wrote a book with 26 questions was going to hit me with one pretty early on in the journey. But yeah, no, I mean, this is about you, but I will, I'll speak to it. I mean, essentially, I sort of got to a place where I was being asked to come and talk to kids about sports management, and I was meeting with young kids to help them get into the space. And I loved helping other people find something that they were going to do every day, all day long in their life that they loved. My dad didn't love his job, and I used to watch him sort of grind through it. And I thought, man, and I figured it out, you work like 82,000 hours in your life. And I thought, God, you got to love it, right? So I would meet with young kids, and then I would start speaking at schools and universities. And then I wrote another book, and then companies started saying, hey, will you come and talk about your book? And what's interesting, Rachel, truly, is that the world sort of looks at it and goes, man, that's really different, right? Like sports agent to a motivational speaker, et cetera. But the truth is, in the agent space, you're representing an athlete or a coach or talent inside of a really unique window of time. And you're trying to connect with them in a way that, and in a world that is really difficult for them to trust anybody. And they're really difficult to get in front of and connect with. And it's about being of service to them and connecting with them in a really, in a space that's difficult to do, and it's difficult to secure their trust. And so when you think about the speaking space and this space, really in part, it's, you walk up on a stage and people are like, all right, like what does this chick got for me? Like, I'm busy, what's the deal?
Yes.
What does she got? And you got a short window of time to build connection, to build trust, and to hopefully, obviously, take them to a better place at the end of that window of time. So the truth is, they really, in my sort of little pea head and heart, feel so similar in regards to serving others inside of a short window of time and trying to gain trust quickly and connect quickly in service of helping other people. So
cool.
It's interesting.
I have about 1,000 questions for you, so you should definitely come on my podcast and we should talk. Because I would love it. I just was thinking about it this morning, like being a high-powered agent is in and of itself such a unique role, but being a woman in that field, like I'm positive there are so many interesting things. And I'm really curious if because you were so good at advocating for other people, do you feel like you're good at advocating for yourself?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely want to go on your show and answer all of these and more questions. But
I have 1,000.
I know.
My natural curiosity is I'm like, okay, wait, no, let's talk about you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I do believe there's power in having representation in an agent. I mean, there's power in being able to have somebody else be your sort of, advocate for you. But I think we have to learn, and you and I both, I know, believe this as women, to ask for what we want, to ask for what we deserve, to get curious about how we can serve others and also make sure that we're getting, fairly taken care of as a result of that, right? But it is a very different kind of negotiation. There's no question about it. Like, and I know a lot of people like that, right? Like going to bat. I mean, I always think about the mom who will storm into the kindergarten class, right? And just advocate for her kids or her children, but yet has a different approach and or no approach to walking into her leader's office inside of an organization with that same level of sort of intensity and focus to get what she wants and maybe what she deserves in that moment too. So it is a very different process. It's a different process, no question about it, when you're doing it for someone else or for yourself.
You could even look at the way that we will take care of our children versus the way 100%. We sometimes take care of ourselves. When my kids were really little, I remember I met with a nutritionist, and she had me talk about, what I was taking in a day, which was like, I had 2 little babies. So I was like eating goldfish crackers, not eating for 8 hours, and then just like eating everything I could, and just just horrible nutrition. And she said, would you ever feed your kids the way you feed yourself? And it like hit me in the stomach. I thought, oh man, oh gosh, no, I never would. Right. And so isn't it interesting that we will advocate for other people, that we will pour out into other people, give everything, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Like we don't take time necessarily to do those things for us. And I think it's helpful for all of us here. That we're not alone in that, because I think it's
no question
we all probably struggle with.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about limiting beliefs earlier, and I think it's true in the sense of you almost think about the way that sometimes we talk to ourselves. We think about, would we ever talk to someone else that way? And we have to sort of recognize those limiting beliefs and say, how would a great teacher or a great friend or a great coach talk to me? And that's the script that we want to run on repeat inside of our heads. It's powerful. So, Rachel, we're flipping this bad boy back, girl. But that was very clever. So,
well, no, I just, because my favorite podcasts are when the host is also like sharing, and you have so much wisdom. So I know I'm playing the part of your audience today who's like, no, but Molly, you tell us some stuff. But yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're cool. No, I am down for sharing all the things. And you asked a question earlier that was really cool. Like, I don't know that I've ever said it that way before. So I think, I appreciate that. And, I pulled out some of the questions in the book that I thought were just really interesting. And I wanted to kind of unpack a few of them that I really thought just kind of spoke to me and I think would connect certainly with others. But which is one of the ones that I thought was obviously incredibly interesting, because I think fear blocks so much for so many of us often in little and big moments. And so the question that you frame up is, who would you be without your fear? Which to me is such a powerful question. So I'm curious, Rachel, what fears have been the hardest for you, and how did you move through them? Because fear is such a blocker for all of us, for me, for all of us. But you've moved through them, and we still have them, certainly, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think, gosh, I have had so many that I have worked through over the course of my adult life. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I will work through one and then another one will surface. And I'm like, oh, God, please. We've done it all at this point. I think probably the biggest one, and I don't know if this is just for the rest of my life, is doing my most important job, which is being an incredible mom to my kids. I have 4 kids. Mm-hmm. And their dad passed away. And so I had and still have a certain amount of incredible fear, like in the pit of my stomach, about doing it all on my own. And I have like amazing support, and I have a fiance who's amazing, but just being the one responsible for all of these people,
Sure.
it's a big weight. And it's you know, sometimes I feel like I have 4 kids, so they're all doing great, but never all at the same time.
Totally. I hear you, girl.
You know,
I have 3. We have 3. I feel you.
It's like, what is going on? Like
Uh-huh.
you know, these ones are thriving, this one's struggling with this thing. And so it's never like you just have a week where everyone's crushing it. I feel like as a parent, if you've got more than one kid, you're sort of always feel like, oh gosh, okay, no, this thing and this. And, you know, we find out at 1 p.m. today if my oldest son got into his dream college, which is like all I'm thinking about, all he's thinking about. And I absolutely believe he will be guided to go wherever he wants to go, like, or wherever he's meant to be. But if he doesn't get in, he's going to be so crushed. And so I'm emotionally preparing myself for that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like you know, you don't have the tools for these things until you're in them. And I guess, you know, I'm looking at it through the lens of parenting, but it's probably the fear at its core is, am I enough? Am I enough to be who they need me to be? Am I enough to stand back up and go again? Am I enough to live out my dreams? Am I enough for any of the things that I have on my heart? That's probably that core fear. And the stupid thing is that of course I am. Of course you are. Of course the listeners are. Everybody, of course. I know that cerebrally.
Right.
But my nervous system is wired to believe that perhaps when the moment arises, I might screw it all up.
But do you ever consider, so what if you do? Like, what if you do, right? Like, what's right?
Oh my gosh. Like,
because it's probably
times.
okay, right? Like, do you ever go there? Because then you can kind of keep going down that, well, what if you do? And what if...
Yes. That's actually a really fantastic, and I don't know who this is from, but that idea of like, and then what happens? Again, a journaling prompt, because I love my journaling prompts. Yeah. You know, okay, let's say that he doesn't get into the drink, and then what happens? I told him last night, because this is also compounded by the fact that all of his friends, like a whole group of his friends, have found out they did get into their early decision school, which is like a whole thing. Sure. So he's now feeling more pressure that everybody else in his mind is getting where they want to go, and what if he's not? And I said, well, either way, we'll have cake. I was like, I'm going to get your favorite cake as if it's your birthday, and we're either using that cake to celebrate or we're going to have cake because it's delicious. Either way, we will have cake.
That's awesome.
We'll come up with, like, we'll keep moving through. We always do.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think that those fears just sort of, they bubble around, and I don't know any other way to manage them except to just keep confronting them when they show up, keep looking them dead in the eye, don't turn away, don't hide away, face the thing that you're afraid of, and move through it. That's the only way that I know of to get on. And
that was a really good like practice speech for your son, you know. And,
right, I'm practicing on you for later.
Exactly. But I mean, I think that there is a laundry list of friends from both of us, and I can tell you for myself that, you know, when things, I didn't get into a school that I wanted to get into, that I thought I could get into, and it was the biggest and best blessing ever, and really changed and so it's sort of finding. I think sometimes it's so powerful, isn't it, to sort of consider, what is there a story there about a young man who didn't get in to where they and then what happened was magical and outstanding, and service of them, your son sort of holding on to the goodness of the moment potentially versus but we live in a world now where go ahead. I'm sorry.
You and I, like, we have the time, right? Like, we can look back over decades of our life and see the moments where it felt like rejection and it actually was protection. It was, oh, no, I see now why that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. but
Yeah.
it's hard to tell a 17-year-old,
Hunter.
you know?
Exactly.
So, because that's
Yes.
hindsight, and he doesn't have his
Yeah.
hindsight yet. But either way, Molly, there will be cake.
That's right. That's right. And probably his favorite kind. You know,
Exactly right.
your take and approach to personal accountability is super cool from the perspective of the way that you talk about owning it, you know, strap it on, as a sports agent might say, and go. And, you know, you talk about personal accountability a lot, and you talk about it through the lens of truly the title of the book, What If You Are the Answer? Tell me about that, right? Like that question, the part of ownership that sort of threads through that question, because it's there's a lot to unpack inside of that, right? I'm just curious your lens through that.
Oh, on so many levels, I don't think that any of us can evolve into the true potential that we have if we don't take ownership of our lives. And ownership, according to me, is that you own all of it. You own the good and the bad. You own when you are awesome. You own when you screw up. And I actually think, you know, I don't want to make sweeping generalizations, but my instinct is that women are much better at owning their mess ups than the things they did really, really well. You know,
I hate to tell you, but I'm with you, and I'm not male bashing, but I'm just saying, yeah.
We'll like beat ourselves up for all of these things and then not give ourselves any credit. I used to do a women's conference every year, and one of the practices that I had the women do, you're going to be shocked to discover, is a journaling prompt again, was to write a letter to yourself from yourself, but from the part of you that never gave up. From the most tenacious part of you. Write a letter, you know, Dear Molly, I am your tenacity, and this is what I want you to know. I am the one who pushed you through 4 years of college. I am the one who found a path. I am the one who put you up for that promotion. I am the one who stood back up I am the one who took care of mama and daddy when they got sick. I get chills remembering it, because you would look out over this room, 4,000 women weeping, writing this letter, because they have never given themselves credit for the stuff that worked out. They've never given themselves credit for the stuff they have done. So ownership to me looks like, can you own all of it? Can you stare at all of the things and go, yep, that is me showing up for my life. And when I get it right, I'm going to try and do more of those things. And when I get it wrong, I'm going to take ownership of that. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to keep going. And I think this is something too that is really important to me as a mom. I think it's important for any kids, but I have 3 boys and a girl. And especially for my boys, I want them to see that behavior modeled. I want them to see what it looks like when someone takes accountability for their actions, when they apologize and they do better. And it's going back to parenting, this is something that's really hard for me, because I never saw this modeled as a child. My parents never apologized for anything.
Okay.
And I, you know, like, so I do it in real time. Like, I'll walk out of one of my kids' rooms and be like, oh, dang it. You know, I didn't handle that well. I could have handled that better. Go back in. Hey, buddy, I'm sorry. I'm really frustrated. It wasn't right to take that out on you. But this is why I'm frustrated. This is what we can do to, you know, can we talk this out? Because I want them to see me do those things, so it normalizes the behavior and doesn't make it such a big deal. Every single human on this planet will mess up in big ways and little ways throughout their life. If you're not, my dad used to be a rock climber, and he and his buddy had this expression, like, if you're not falling, you're not climbing. Like, if you're not slipping back, if you're not slipping out of it, you're not climbing. That, like, if you want to get better, if you want to get stronger, you have to climb. And if you're going to climb, you're going to fall.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, I lost you for a second.
Sorry.
So, no, not your fault. So that, to me, that's just like, to mess up as human and to own it is how you become a better human.
And to your point, if we're pushing ourselves, if we're going for more, if we're trying new things, if we're challenging ourselves, then we inevitably will fail.
Yeah,
And I love one of
for
your
sure.
questions is, right, did you fail or did you learn? I think is so true. It's so powerful. And, I see things, Rachel, so much through the lens of sports, and failure is just an absolute, unquestionable part of the entire journey. And I think what great leaders do, great coaches do too, is help their athletes. And I think great leaders do this, own the process, own the good and the challenging, and recognize their role in it in service of getting better, showing up better, improving. It's such a powerful thing. And I love that you talk about it through the lens of parenting. My husband and I have 3 daughters, and it's funny because they'll tell their friends, they're like, oh, your mom, like she's, and it's like, oh no, she's like really a softie. Like, honestly, like they're like, oh no, she cries, like she's a total softie. Because but it's good, I think, for them to see all of us and not hide it, whether we make a mistake or we're struggling through something, for them to see that, because you're an incredibly strong woman, and for them to see you be real with them, man, that helps them grow. So cool.
Absolutely.
So cool. So one of the questions I think when I think about, embracing change and embracing growth, as we were talking about, this one really struck me. And what isn't your passion? What's definitely not your purpose? I'm not like, I was the kid in school that it's like the story problems. You know what I mean? Like if the car and the wind was blowing and you needed to get there, I just like threw in the towel, like no chance.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were good at those.
Horrible.
I'm a grown woman and I still can't. You just started saying that. I was like, oh gosh, don't ask
I know.
me. The train gets there first.
But this is kind of, it's kind of getting to another level for me intellectually here. No, I'm kidding. But what isn't your passion? What's definitely not your purpose? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, this one came honestly because in the work that I do, whether it's, speaking in a keynote or doing a conference or people who come up to me at the airport to say hi, I kept getting a lot of similar questions. And it was in particular young women in their 20s and 30s. I'm positive that we experience this in our 40s, 50s, and beyond. But young women in their 20s and 30s were coming up, and there was a lot of anxiety around not knowing who, what is my passion? Like, Rachel, how do I figure out what I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to, and I just kept seeing it again and again. And every time I would sort of be like, oh gosh, I'm twice your age and I don't feel like I always know the answer to that question. So this chapter was really me trying to speak into the hearts of people who are struggling with feeling like they should know the answer to that question. If you are blessed enough to know why you were put on this planet, well, that is fantastic. Please write a book so that the rest of us can read it. But most people I know experience lots of different passions over the course of their life, and they find purpose in different things. Right now, there's a lot of purpose that I have in being a mama, but hopefully if I do this job well and these babies, fly out of the nest someday, my purpose for that particular role will shift.
Sure.
It won't be as dedicated as it is now. So if that is my only capital P purpose in life, then what am I supposed to do with the next chapter in my life? So I would love for people to take a bit of the pressure off themselves. And the way that I think we do that is that you experiment and you see, how can I live a life with purpose in it? How can I live a life that has passion, but not feel like I have to know the only lanes I'm supposed to stick in? So if you set out in 2025 and you said, this year I'm going to figure out what isn't my passion. In order to do that, you might have to test out 40 different hobbies. You might try macrame and raising championship weenie dogs and volunteering at, the local senior center. You might try all kinds of things. And along the way, you might find 2 or 3 that really light up your heart. And you'll find, 37 that you're not that interested in at all. But if you approach it through the lens of what isn't for me, I think it gives you some freedom. I think it allows you to be a bit more playful. It doesn't have to be this hardcore answer. It can just be what feels right for you right now. So that was the impetus behind this idea, because I think there's a lot of people who are very prescriptive about how to get your ultimate passion, how to live with purpose. And going into this new year, I think that it's more about how can we align with purpose.
Yes. I
Instead
love that
of
word.
feeling like you've got to like be inside of a very specific box and stay in that box and live out that truth for the rest of your life.
You know, it's really cool the way you talk about that, because I agree with you. And I think the world has put this enormous amount of pressure, particularly on young people, to know what they want to do. And our girls are in college, 3 girls and a junior and 2 juniors and a senior. And I'll say, it's okay to not know. Yes. Like, it's okay. Just keep being curious. Step into different kinds of opportunities, work experiences, internships. Learn what you love, what you hate, what you're good at, what people tell you you're really good at, what you enjoy, all those things. And then it'll continue to iterate. I almost would argue that if we're living in pursuit of getting better every day, and that's really my 6th book was Dynamic Drive, which is this mindset, in part suggesting that we've really never arrived at who and what we're becoming, because we're consistently iterating and aligning our core values with what we're choosing to say yes and no to. And the byproduct of this is essentially going to be our legacy one day.
Absolutely.
And so I'm curious, you know, this alignment word to me is a really important word. And I think for us as women, and for women who work in the world particularly, and men who are working or at home, regardless of gender, candidly, I think it's important to know what matters most to you. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. And then how can you get clear around that in service of saying, now I'm going to say yes and no in order to live in alignment with my deepest beliefs. And I think where maybe we get mixed up, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but where we sometimes think about purpose as something that we do versus maybe it's something that we believe and align to, and then it determines maybe then how we show up and what, in fact, we actually spend our time and energy on.
Absolutely.
How do you, what comes up for you with all that? Because it's such a big, overwhelming thing for people.
Yeah,
I agree.
It really
but
is.
I also, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, as you were talking, I just remembered something I learned this week, and it's sort of connected to this, but I feel like it's so good. I feel like your audience is going to geek out over it with us.
Love it.
So, are you familiar with the 80-20 principle?
Yes.
Okay, so I love the 80-20 principle. I think I've written about it in every book I have. I talk about it all the time. For those of you who are not familiar, it is, I'm going to for sure mess this up, but an Italian, like a mathematician or economist or something like that, a very long time ago, looked out over Italy and realized that 20% of the people in their town owned 80% of the land. 20% of the plants in his garden gave 80% of the yield. 20% of a customer, or 20% of his customers were giving 80% of his profit. So he started to notice, not exactly, but roughly 20% versus 80%. And there's a million books on this, and you can go on Amazon right now and find one. But this idea of the 80-20 principle, let's look at it through the lens of being an entrepreneur. And I promise I'm going to make this make sense. I
love it. Purpose. This is cool.
Through the lens of being an entrepreneur, if you look at this and go, okay, well, let's look at all of my customers for this year, and let's identify who are the customers that gave the most revenue. It ends up being a much smaller segment than you realize. And can you sort of mine through that 20% and go, wow, here's a good example. I used to be a wedding planner. Very long time ago. I was a wedding planner in Los Angeles.
Wow. Okay.
And at the end of the year, I laid out all of the clients I had for the year. And then I identified, I had a little tab, where did that client come from? So at the time I did advertising on a website called The Knot, which was really popular. I did a few different bits of advertising. And I noticed that with 20 bridal clients, 8 of them had come from a photographer that I knew. 8 clients came from one person. And of those clients, all the clients of the year, those 8 people were my highest paying clients because she was a high-end photographer. So she was only really referring people to me who had a bigger budget to spend on an event. Now, meanwhile, the other people that I was getting through advertising were much more work, weren't as profitable for me. Like it was so obvious. I thought, oh my gosh, Susan is sending me the best clients I have, and she doesn't cost me any money at all. She's sending them to me because we like working together. She's a good friend. Versus I'm spending all this money on advertising. It's really not coming to fruition. So what would it look like going into the next year if I just really took care of Susan? If I made sure I was sending her as many people as she's sending me, if occasionally I sent her flowers, if I took her to lunch, if I stopped advertising, I stopped spending any money on advertising and just invested, and it changed my business. Wow. Because I was investing in the 20% that was giving me the best results. So that was a very long-winded way to encourage your listeners to consider in their life the 20 versus 80 in their life. So here's how we do this with values. I heard this is what I learned this week.
Love this.
Write out a list of everything you do. This is from Dan Sullivan. I'm reading one of his books with Ben Hardy, and they talk about this idea. Write down everything that you do on a daily basis in the last quarter. Okay. Like literally, you go to the gym, you have this call with me, you do everything that you do. And then if you're thinking of, in this instance, let's say that you want to align more with purpose and you want to be walking more in line with your own values. Or another way to look at it is, what is the best version of me doing? What is the future version of me? What decisions would they make? If you go through that list of what you currently do on a daily basis, circle the ones that the future best version of you, that the most aligned with purpose version of you, that the you in 10 years, circle the items on the list that they are still doing 10 years from now.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And then everything else that's not on the list, let it go.
Yep. Love
or
that.
Maybe you're not in a place where you're ready to make a decision like that, but at least you know. At least you know that how much time you spend watching Netflix versus how much time you spend reading nonfiction books.
Yep.
At least you know that, how much you're drinking. At least you know that you got to give up the smoking. At least you might not be ready to make the choice, but at least you can be honest with yourself about what is holding you back from being aligned with the best version of you.
That is a really cool way.
Isn't that a cool idea?
It's a super cool way to do it. Yeah. And then, and I think too, saying, okay, once you circle all those things, then how do you sort of go, okay, now how do I go insert those in my calendar and really sort of ensure that I protect those things? Because I think I always say, if you don't decide where your time and energy goes, everybody else will, right?
Amen.
But, yeah, 100%. So I love that. That is such a cool little tool, little tactic. That's good stuff. And you know what it kind of comes to is the question too that you talk about which is what's working. I mean, that's a little bit of what you're unpacking there, right? What's working, which is so cool. Yes. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, pouring gasoline on what is working in your life to have more of it. And I want to say this in case I would be listening to our podcast. I'd be so annoyed with me right now. The book that I was reading, Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy are incredible. And I think they have 4 books and I've read them all. But in particular, the book I was reading is called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Love
and Molly,
it. Okay.
if you've never
I'm writing this down.
Please let me connect you. He's such a good podcast guest.
Awesome.
Love him. So, sorry, I'm
Dan Sullivan and no, I love it. Dan Sullivan and
it's Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
they're great. But the book is 10x is easier than 2x.
Amen.
But pouring gasoline, I talk about this a lot. Like, where is the fire burning the brightest? Where is it, where are things working? How can we do more of that stuff? So years ago, I was at one of the first business conferences I ever got to go to, and it was back when I was an event planner, and I got to go see Marian Nafisi, who was the founder of a company called Minted. And she was speaking on the founding of this was ages ago, before they had really exploded in the way that they would. But she was talking about startup culture and, tech, and I was just absorbing everything she was saying. And someone asked her, like, how have you been able to make the business grow as much as it has? And she said a line I have never forgotten, and I've quoted her a million times, which is, follow the signs of life. Follow the signs of life, which I would translate to pay attention to what is actually working, what is moving with flow instead of coming up against an obstacle. And in our lives, I think this is so stinking powerful, but we often ignore it. Like, I know that if I go to the gym every single day and work out, I'm going to be a better version of myself. I'm going to be a better mama. I'm going to be a better human. My health's going to be better. I make better decisions about my nutrition if I've worked out. Like, just everything works better if I go to the gym. But it is so easy to talk myself out of going to the gym, especially when it's cold.
All right.
So it's simple stuff like that. It's like, well, what works? Okay, if it works, do 100% of the things you know work. Do 100% of the things that you know work. Most of us we don't need another book to read. You don't need to read my book. You don't need to listen to this podcast. You don't need to watch another YouTube video. You need to do the things that you know work. So if you pay attention to what is working, again, a journal is a great way to do this. To just write down, man.
Yeah.
In the last quarter, like, what felt really hard, what worked really well. At the end of every year, I do something called a calendar audit. Just in case you didn't know how dorky I am.
I love that. I am down for that.
Yeah.
I'm a dork too.
Yeah. I take half a day and I review my entire calendar for the whole year.
So cool.
And every single thing that is in there, I put in a different category. Is this worth my time? Was it life-giving? Did it produce the results that I want? Or was it a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of energy? And I divide the year that way. Wow. And I'm able to look back and get real clarity on what works and what didn't, so I can make sure it's easier for me to say no to anything that doesn't align with the kind of year I want to have. And I'll add one more piece to this, because when
keep going, you're killing it.
When I first did this years ago, I would go through my calendar and I was just dividing, like, what worked for my business, what didn't really work for my business. And then I came to the end of a year where I had a great successful year in business, but I was completely depleted. Like, my own emotional well-being, I just had run myself ragged. I was pretty burnt out, and I thought, gosh, I don't want to do that again this year. It's so hard for me when opportunities in front of me. It's very hard for me to say no. Sure. So I don't want to do that. So how can I be better? And I use Google Calendar, no affiliation. I just love a Google Calendar. I think it's very easy. And I color code everything. I color code. Do I have to be on camera today? Is this a meeting with my internal team? Is this a meeting with my external team? Is this a PR thing? Whatever. But I realized I had nothing in my calendar for self-care. So I made a decision that every single week I would see reflections of self-care. If I look at my week at a glance, I can see things that are me taking care of me. And those in my calendar are yellow. So it's just a really easy hack. If I look at the week ahead of me, which I always do, and there's no yellow, we got to stop. We got to book a yoga class. We've got to plan a walk with a girlfriend. We've got to do something that's going to fill up our cup to make sure that I get to the end of the year having lived 12 months the way that I want to.
Well, that was so good. I mean, there's so many little nuggets and bombs of good stuff. And you know, I'm going to do that, by the way, because we're doing this interview.
Great.
And
honestly,
I love that. I mean, it's so, No, it's so powerful. But, and you know what's interesting? I wrote a book, Rachel, a few years ago called The Energy Clock. And because what was so interesting to me, and this might sound so odd, but when I was an agent, athletes only really pay attention to the kind of energy they need for games, practice, workouts, moments that are really integral to what they do. They're not obsessed with their calendars like business people are. And so when I stepped away from the agent business, where that's not the way they're operating at all, really, I got into the business world and I was like, this is so amazing. Like, people show up at meetings and they're like super pissed that they're there. And they go to meetings they don't want to be at, and then they get to the meeting that they really need to be locked and loaded on, and they're like fried, or they're late because they were at something else. And I'm like, this is so odd. Like, I truly, as odd as that sounds, I was like, weird. And so I sort of did something similar where I thought, okay, what if you were able to make a list of all the things that give you energy, that lift you up personally, professionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually? What are the things that give you energy, and then what drains your energy in all those categories? And then what I've tried to do is take my calendar and, again, same deal, color code the things that give me energy, but also insert them, but then recognize that there's going to be moments that we all have to do things in life that maybe we don't love to do. And so how do you do the, as you call them, the yellows, I call them the greens, in front of the things that really drain you? You know, you go get that yoga class in so you can sort of pour from a full or half full cup versus an empty cup. But what you're suggesting is such an important part of being able to show up for people that matter. And it just takes intentionality, right? But this isn't brain surgery, right? Like you're saying.
Yeah. Years ago, I heard someone give a TED Talk on this, like in my local community. And she talked about this idea that imagine, and I'm going to speak to the women, I'm sure that men need this too, but lots of us caregivers, we're in those roles. So she said, imagine that you are a glass vase. You're a glass vase and you're sitting on a tabletop, and God, universe, source, whatever you believe in, is pouring a pitcher of water into you, the glass vase, and everything that you need, everything good, everything you will ever need for your life is in the water that's being poured into you. She said the natural reaction for women when they have this water being poured into them is, well, what about my children, and what about my parents, and what about my team at work? And so we work to pour the water that's in us out on other people. We pour a little on the kids, and we pour a little on mama and daddy, and we pour this to the team at work, and this to our church community, and we keep pouring and pouring and pouring. And what happens to a glass vase if it keeps tipping itself over? It will eventually shatter. She said, now, imagine this. Imagine you're the glass vase, and God, the universe and source, is pouring everything you ever needed into you, and you stand tall and firm and grounded where you are. What will happen to the water in the vase? It will eventually overflow onto everyone else you know and love. Isn't that good?
Dude, that is so money. That is so good.
Yeah. So it's like, man, if you can
love that, yes,
more this year into taking care of yourself, it really does show up well for everybody else in your life.
Oh, man, that is good. That is super cool. Wow, I love that. I'm going to share that with our daughters. Rachel, I could do this all afternoon, but we have to find out if a little boy got into school. We have to find out, not a little boy.
I know.
I'm praying for him, girl.
I know, we're so close.
Oh, I love it.
I appreciate that.
I love it. And there's so many other, 26 questions. This book is really powerful. It's strong, it's powerful, and I think these questions are so thought-provoking. I could go on and on with, the one I do love is, what would you do if you knew you could not fail, succeed?
Yes.
What? I got to just go there. I got to let you go, but I got to go there. This is so, because it's different.
So good.
Yes.
Yeah. So this actually came from Seth Godin. This is not my question. He was very kind in letting me share it and steal it. But, God, he's so good.
Love him.
But, we've all heard that saying, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? And the intention behind it is, well, if we knew we could not fail, we would come up with a list of what our heart really wants.
Mm-hmm.
But he asks the question, what would you do if you knew you could not succeed? And that, like, just punched me in the gut at the exact right moment I needed to hear it, because it's asking, what do you love so much that you'd be willing to do it even if nothing came of it? What would give you, we go back to this idea of purpose and passion. What would be so amazing that even if nobody ever knew your name, you'd still write every day because you love to write?
Yeah.
You know, you'd still show up every day because you love playing, you know, jazz with your 3-piece band. Like, you keep doing these things, and that one is so powerful in a world that tells us if we can't have 5 million followers and make all the money in the world and do that, this thing we love has no value. And it has value because you have value.
Right.
We were not meant to go through this life and just slog and work and, you know, make sure that we're making enough money to buy the right car and get the right house. No, we were here. We are here to create and see what we can do and evolve and push ourselves. And that, to me, a big part of that is that you do things that you love, even if nobody knows about them, but they make your heart feel good.
That's so cool. It's sort of, I think about, like, it's not attaching to the outcome at some level, isn't it? Right.
Exactly.
I mean, in part, it's sort of saying do it and not attached to, oh my gosh, Rachel, this is super fun. I'm going to hit you with rapid fire because you got stuff to do, girl. Okay, so best advice you've ever received.
Oh my gosh, that feels impossible. Best advice I've ever, I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. Best advice I've ever received.
You can think, yeah.
Oh my. It's like asking me what kid is my favorite. It just is like all I love.
All right, well, like, you can give me a couple. Okay, that's okay. Don't stress out.
Okay, so best advice I've ever received. It's not advice, but it sort of was powerful for me, is learning to ask, how is this for me? You know, life isn't happening to you, life is happening for you, was a really powerful perspective shift for me in walking through hard things and going, okay, this is not what we anticipated and this is not what we wanted, but how can we learn and grow from this experience has been a really big one for me.
Yeah. When you feel overwhelmed, right, or you feel unfocused, you have a lot of demands on you, certainly. What do you do? I actually, as I'm asking it, I'm thinking, I journal, Molly. That's what I go to.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm going to give you the actual truth instead of the BS.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm supposed to give you. So a couple of things. I am very tactile, and if I can just hug my fiance,
oh yeah,
it really grounds me. So physical touch is very grounding to me. So if I can just hug him, and he knows exactly why I'm coming over, that is very grounding to me. I don't drink a lot, but I do love a beer. And I know that is that's not the like cool, like whatever thing to say, and probably a ridiculous answer because I'm supposed to be like whatever, but there's a gluten-free beer that I really love. And so literally, because I've been doing back-to-back stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to be my drink this week. I'm going to have one beer tonight, and I'm so excited. But because it's probably more the experience of it. Okay, I'm going to sit down and we're going to be on the back patio. And I guess I could absolutely do that with some hot cocoa or an iced tea or whatever. But I want to give you guys the real answer, which is occasionally I have a beer called, I think it's like Duara, Dora. I'm going to say that wrong. It's fabulous if you haven't had it and if you're gluten-free.
Oh my gosh. I need to negotiate an endorsement deal.
Gluten-free beer.
We need to drop that cut and get a little endorsement deal, and I'll negotiate it for you, Rachel. I love that.
Perfect.
I love it. What, as a single mom, as a working mom, as a high-profile woman, what's the biggest piece of advice you have for women? Maybe it's for single moms. Maybe it's for women who work, period, and have children. What is your biggest piece of advice there?
You are the only mama they're ever going to know.
Yeah.
This is advice that my pediatrician gave me when the boys were little. And I was really concerned about being a working mom and what that would mean. I didn't have a lot of working moms in my environment at the time, and I didn't have a lot of family members who were that. And I felt a lot of pressure to be a certain kind of mom. And I really struggled with it. And she said, "Oh, you're the only mom that they're ever going to know. So the way that you are their mom is exactly what they think being a mom is." So we compare ourselves to the other moms that we see. Our kids are not doing that. And I think that my children are so much better prepared for life and the world because I am a working mom. And I've worked really hard. And they can see the exact correlation of that.
Yeah.
You know, we'll go skiing over the Christmas holidays. Like, they know that we're going skiing because mama works really hard to be able to give them that lifestyle. So I would encourage you all, even any parent, to be more compassionate with yourself about doing the best you can do. You know, you can ask yourself that question. Oh, this is a really good one. Okay, wait, sorry. I have another question for you.
Girl, I'm here.
I got to see an incredible panel of women, I mean, probably 15 years ago, and I cannot remember her name, but she was a single working mom. She had a very high profile job as an attorney here in LA, and her kids were grown at that point. So they asked her, you know, what do you think really helped you? And she said, I taught my children to ask me this question: Mama, are you doing the best you can? Even saying it, Molly, makes me want to cry. Wow. And she said, I would call home at night. The kids were with a nanny because I had to work. She's a very big job. She would call home and say, I'm so sorry, buddy. I can't get home for dinner. And she taught them to ask her, Mama, are you doing the best you can? And she said, sometimes that meant that I would say, yeah, buddy, I promise you I'm doing the very best I can, and I cannot get home for dinner. And he'd go, okay, yeah, cool, we'll see you later. And other times he would ask me, Mama, are you doing the best you can? And I would say, you know what? No, I'm not. And I would close down my work, and I would be home in time to have spaghetti with him. But I never forgot that idea that, like, even if you don't teach your kid to ask that, just ask yourself, gut check. Is this the best you can do? Yeah. Probably it is. Right. And if it is, then make peace with the fact that this is the best you can do today, and tomorrow you hope to do a little better. Yeah. But there are trade-offs to everything. We're not always going to be able to show up exactly how we wish we could, especially if we're working parents. So give yourself grace for that.
I love that. And you know, being gentle on ourselves as parents is so critical, because it's a lot. And I think that sort of almost invitation to be gentle. And I think, you know, to pursue things in our lives wholeheartedly, to go after things, it's going to mean sometimes that we're out of balance. That's why I'm not a fan of balance. I think it's about alignment. So I really, that's a really powerful, again, question. Wow, look at, you're threaded with them. I love it. So the show's called Game Changer. So one last question. Who or what is a game changer who inspires you, and why?
Oh gosh, who or what is a game changer that inspires me? I'm not gonna, I sound like I'm gonna say this because of the job that you have had and the world that you exist inside of, but my audience will tell you this is something I say quite a lot. I am obsessed with professional athletes. I'm not a sports person. I don't know sports or maybe how exactly things work, but I have forever been obsessed with how an athlete functions at the highest levels. So in a lot of the books that I read, I am devouring, what does it look like to perform in that place? What does it look like? Like, I'm a dork and I read like their trainers and you know exactly what they did, because I think that someone who can go all in on one area of their life to certain times, like the exclusion of a lot of other things, that's not a capability that I necessarily have, but I can study how they do that, and I can learn from, how do you go with a bunch of intensity on one area? Could I apply that to something in my life? So I do love learning about how athletes make it work. I mean, like the Simone Biles documentary on Netflix is so, you're just like, oh my gosh, she's so inspiring. One of my favorite quotes for myself, just in work, is an old Kobe Bryant quote, which said, "Booze don't block shots." For anyone who has, right? Isn't that good?
So good. I've never heard that. That is so
booze
good.
Don't block shots. And so there's like, I could probably sit here and come up with all sorts of things I've been inspired by over the years.
Right.
But I think there's a wealth of information, maybe because it's so different from how I see myself, that I love to read about how other people do what they do. And the second thing I would say, sort of tangentially, is books. Books are fundamentally the key to my life. Like, I would not be the person that I am today if I couldn't devour the written word. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for books. I'm so grateful for the teachers that are inside of them. And in case someone listening needs to hear me say this, whatever you are struggling with right now, I guarantee there's a book that can help you with it. And you don't even have to spend money. You could go to your library and get something, or you could listen to an audiobook so you don't have to read, like do two things at once. But maybe this is the year that your audience really commits to taking in more nonfiction, because I just think it's so incredibly powerful.
Amen. I mean, it's incredible that we can take in words. We can hear them, we can read them, and it can change our lives fundamentally. And these can be things like, some of these things that you've shared even are little tiny nuggets that can really pivot us in significant ways. And your book is incredible. There are, to your point, so many incredible books. Rachel Hollis, this is super fun. I tell you, I could do this all day. Want to cancel every other meeting for...
Yes, let's go.
Let's go, baby. But we got to get this boy into college.
I know. Oh, God.
Thank you so much. Super fun. I love it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.